In early 2005, months before the events of Hurricane Katrina, an Ohio Sheriff's Office received a call from a woman named Nicole Bernard. Miss Bernard claimed she fled to Ohio with her child from Ponchatoula, Louisiana, after her child told a counselor that they had been abused at their church. For a few weeks, Miss Bernard did not reveal names or incidences claiming this or that was going on, and she had to hang up the phone with the Tangipahoa Parish Sheriff's Office. Then, slowly, Miss Bernard began to name names. The day after which, Reverend Louis LaMonica Jr. walked into the Sheriff's Office of Livingston Parish. He had quite a story to tell himself. In the decades leading up to the early 1980s, before the passing of Reverend Louis LaMonica Sr., a beloved pastor in the small town of Ponchatoula, Louisiana, the church boasted a large congregation of 1,000 members, give or take a dozen or so. After the good pastor passed away, his previously disinterested son, Louis Jr., decided to take over the flock, at which time, in a slow leak, people left the church for neighboring congregations. This left an extremely small lot of 15 to 20 adults who claimed the church as their spiritual home. However, this was not surprising to anyone who visited the church, as the pastor became more and more erratic and strange. By the end of it, the small church had become well known in the area as, quote, strange people and a cult of sorts. Eventually, no new members were allowed into the church. However, no one in the whole of the area had any idea of the actions of the members with which Reverend Louis LaMonica Jr. would, quote, assist the police. Louis LaMonica Jr. walked into the sheriff's office in Tangipahoa Parish's neighboring Livingston Parish, where he resided, and proceeded to describe all manner of sexual offenses. Quote, "He didn't come to turn himself in. He came to talk with us," said Stan Carpenter, the detective supervisor in Livingston Parish. Mr. LaMonica matter-of-factly told him of having sex with at least 2 boys from the time they were 4 until they were 12 or 13, as well as having sex with a dog, Mr. Carpenter said, adding that Mr. LaMonica did not act as though he was confessing to crimes. He was just trying to be helpful. "We didn't let him walk away," Mr. Carpenter said. Louis LaMonica allegedly implicated 8 other members of his flock, including a deputy sheriff, in, quote, cult-like rituals involving the rape of as many as 24 young victims, from infants to teens, between 1999 and 2003. Those accused range from LaMonica's wife to almost all others in the cult, including the children of LaMonica, who also claim to have been in Congress with one another. Authorities said witnesses have described the use of robes, pentagrams on the church floor, sex with a dog, and the sacrifice of cats. The alleged victims, then suspected to number up to 24, included children ranging from infants to young teens, some of them the offspring of those accused. "I have been a prosecutor in some rape cases and child molestation cases, but I've never had a group accused of doing anything like this," said Tangipahoa Parish Sheriff Daniel Edwards, a former state prosecutor. LaMonica was arrested, followed by 8 others authorities described as central members of the ring. All but 1 are being held without bond. Even the tipster from Ohio, Nicole Bernard, was arrested on rape charges along with her ex-husband, Trey Bernard. LaMonica claimed that he had drunk cat's blood and poured it over the bodies of his young victims, some of whom were the abuser's children. Local police say his claims have been confirmed by some victims, of whom half a dozen have so far been interviewed, and by some of the fellow abusers whose names LaMonica freely gave to police. According to Captain Stuart Murphy in a recent documentary about the events, the Tangipahoa Parish Sheriff's Office was not interested one bit in the satanic happenings. As far as the law is concerned, that was not a crime, aside from the abuse of animals. Mr. LaMonica was wont to confess all that he had on his mind, and the sheriff's office obliged. However, around 4 years after his confessions, when it came time to confess on the stand in front of a jury, the good Reverend's story changed. He told a Tangipahoa Parish jury that he falsely confessed to child rape because he thought it would be the only way to get his wife and children back. LaMonica had been put on trial on 4 counts of aggravated rape of his sons, when they were age 11 or younger. LaMonica was the second among the 8 church members indicted on charges of molesting children to go on trial. LaMonica's attorney, Michael Thiel, maintained in questioning his client that LaMonica falsely confessed to child rape because he was being controlled by a woman who claimed to be a prophet of God. In fact, lawyers for the other co-defendants, ages 24 to 55, claimed that not only were their clients innocent, but they were victims of a brainwashing scheme, orchestrated by a woman named Lois Mowbray. Meanwhile, during the investigation of the actual church itself, police found no evidence of satanic rituals as described. All that was found were the writings of scriptures of the Bible that only showed in black light. No physical evidence of torture, blood sacrifice, or any of the named confessed actions, except LaMonica's sons, who at the time drew pictures of the supposed actions of all of the congregants, sexual acts done to them and other children as well as adults together. The boys later retracted their statements, but according to their counselors, it only made their mental states worse. There were those of the group that actually lived on the property, which made it all the easier to keep the congregation tightly knit. Lois Mowbray, the supposed prophet, seemed to hold an enormous amount of influence over the church members. In particular, Mowbray's 586-page journal, in which she allegedly had other parishioners write out their confessions to the sex acts, was not detailed in the grand jury proceeding, but a detective described Mowbray as the church's pastor and suggested there had been infighting among the congregation, whose membership had eroded to about 15 members before its doors were permanently shut in 2003. Mowbray, formerly of Ponchatoula, had been arrested by the Tangipahoa Parish Sheriff's Office in May 2005 as an accessory after the fact to rape and failure to report a felony. Mowbray was never charged by the district attorney's office and was never brought before a Tangipahoa Parish grand jury. After his wife forced him to move into the church in 2003, LaMonica testified his wife told him to work for an electrical company owned by Mowbray and other church members for $10 a day, or she would divorce him and take his sons away. "I really don't want a divorce," LaMonica testified. "I really want to work this out." After working 10-hour days installing wiring, LaMonica then would work around the church doing chores such as scrubbing floors and toilets with toothbrushes, he testified. For a while, LaMonica said he had to wear a dress and 2 rubber snakes representing his mother and aunt because they were, quote, pharaohs, LaMonica testified. Church members once shaved his head and called him Pharaoh as well, he said. She convinced herself she was like Moses, and Tangipahoa was coming out of Egypt, LaMonica said, referring to the biblical story of Moses leading the Jewish people out of slavery in Egypt. Pharaoh was blocking the way. In addition to suffering humiliation, LaMonica often was beaten by other church members, he testified, or the other church members would pace around him while cursing him in the name of God, he said. LaMonica testified that in 2003, he was told to make a written confession about every woman he had lusted after in his lifetime. "I was told to write, so this is what I wrote," LaMonica said. "I figured that was it." In 2004, LaMonica testified he was approached again to write about raping his sons. By this time, the torture and sleep deprivation had stopped, but he was still not allowed to go home to his wife. "The only way to get out of this thing was to keep writing," LaMonica said. "I thought, what's it gonna hurt? They're just gonna burn it." In May 2005, only days after LaMonica's wife helped him get an apartment in Albany, Louisiana, church members began pressuring him to go to the Livingston Parish Sheriff's Office and confess to taking part in child sex cult, LaMonica testified. LaMonica said he was told to ask for a deal in exchange for information that he would not be arrested. "What it came down to was I wanted to go home," LaMonica said. "My only avenue home was through Lois Mowbray. I had to do whatever she told me to do." On cross-examination, LaMonica was told to repeat some of his previous explanations of why he confessed and was pressed for reasons why he allowed others to force him to do things. LaMonica was asked why he didn't leave a church where members repeatedly accused him of stealing money and molesting his children. "And you just took that?" the prosecutor asked. "Yes, I did, and we're here today because of it," LaMonica said. Stephen Brown, a prosecution witness and a U.S. Department of Homeland Security officer in Columbus, Ohio, joined the church in 2002 when he first moved from Santa Cruz, California to Kentwood, Louisiana at age 17. Brown was an employee of the electrical business of Al Pearson, who also went to trial for aggravated rape and had already moved to the church. Brown said he also moved into the church with Christopher Labat and Paul Fontenot, who both went to trial for aggravated rape, and another man to have a short commute to work, walking downstairs. Trey Bernard and Reverend Louis LaMonica Jr. already had moved in. Austin Trey Bernard III of Hammond was the youth pastor of Hosanna Church. Brown said he and the others converted former Sunday school rooms into efficiency apartments and installed a shower for the group to use. Brown testified that he never saw a child raped or any occult ritual. However, LaMonica and Bernard began saying in January and February 2005 that they had raped their children and would immediately recant, explaining they said it to get back at their wives. Quite frankly, Brown testified, the remarks made him angry. If you're mad at your wife, that's not exactly a fond way to get back. The confessions and recantations became more frequent, he said. Soon, Bernard stopped taking the statements back, but LaMonica continued to tell and recant. The following contains graphic detail, even more so than has been to this point. If you wish to fast forward, please do so now. The following contains a testimony from a pediatric forensic medicine specialist with graphic detail and may be triggering and/or traumatizing for others. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Brown told the jury he became concerned about the children, so he talked with Labat, who was a Tangipahoa Parish Sheriff's deputy at the time, about what to do. Labat's response was that he could do nothing without physical evidence. At one point, Bernard showed Brown a copy of a spiral notebook in which Bernard had described how he abused children. Brown said he took that notebook to Labat as evidence and then wondered why nothing ever happened. It was so stomach-churning that I had a hard time reading it, Brown said of the manuscript. That 211-page handwritten journal was subsequently given to the jury to read in court. In that diary, Bernard mostly described his sexual relationship with LaMonica. However, he outlined how he gradually went from touching his daughter as an infant to raping her. Bernard also described the progression of his involvement with raping LaMonica's sons and allowing LaMonica to rape his daughter. Bernard's attorney, Al Ben-Sabat, maintains that his client's diary contains sexual fantasies, not confessions. If I was a sex criminal, I don't think I would be writing all of this down, Ben-Sabat said in an interview with reporters. Dr. Adrienne Adzemis, a forensic pediatrician from Children's Hospital in New Orleans, was called by the prosecution to the witness stand to describe her 2005 examination of the two LaMonica boys, then 15 and 18, that Bernard was accused of raping. Dr. Adzemis' testimony concerning what the boys had told her matched what the boys said in taped interviews played in court. Under questioning by Assistant District Attorney Don Wall, Dr. Adzemis disputed part of Bernard's defense against the rape charges, the lack of physical evidence, and the expected recantation by the boy victims. Dr. Adzemis testified that physical evidence of sexual abuse, scarring, or tearing of the vagina or anus is rarely evident, especially when the abuse is reported well after it took place. Quote, "If tears did occur, that part of the body heals quickly," said the doctor. Small tears heal in a day or two without leaving any scars. Dr. Adzemis testified that an adult penis is capable of penetrating a child, even an infant, without injuring the child. For many reasons, such as pressure asserted by other family members, children will recant, she said. It is not common, but it does happen, she said. In a document titled State of Louisiana versus Louis LaMonica, number 2009, KA 1366, July 29, 2010, it states, in late March 2005, Dr. Adrienne Adzemis, a pediatric forensic medicine specialist, saw ML, the older of the LaMonica boys, and SL, the younger of the LaMonica sons, for therapy. Dr. Atzemis also performed a full physical examination on each boy. Dr. Atzemis testified at trial that ML and SL told her that they were forced to perform sexual acts on the defendant and others. ML said he had oral and anal sex with the defendant at home and at the church. SL also said he had oral and anal sex with the defendant. In April 2005, Jennifer Thomas, a forensic interviewer with the Child Advocacy Center, interviewed ML and SL in Hammond. At trial, Thomas indicated that ML was 18 years old when he was interviewed, and as such, his interview could not be used in court. The videotaped interview from SL, who was almost 15 years old at the time, was played for the jury. In the interview, SL listed at least half a dozen adult church members, including the defendant, who took part in the sexual abuse. According to SL, sexual incidents occurred at his house, Bernard's house, and the church. SL told Thomas that he also had sex with a dog and with AB, who was about 1 year old. SL and Thomas also went over SL's drawings of various sexual acts involving certain people, including himself, ML, and the defendant. SL indicated to Thomas that some of his drawings depicted actual events, while other drawings were products of his imagination or based on what he and the defendant talked about. According to SL, of about 55 drawings, approximately 22 of them depicted actual events involving sex. In July and August 2005, SL had several therapy sessions with Dr. Allison McCain, a clinical psychologist. Dr. McCain testified at trial that she found SL to have a lot of depression and some anxiety and guilt and feelings of worthlessness. SL told Dr. McCain that he tried to cope with his feelings with distraction and repression. SL told Dr. McCain that he had been using these coping mechanisms for years to try to not think about the molestation. SL also indicated that after his parents separated, the molestation stopped. However, the elder son of Louis LaMonica later said on the witness stand that his thoughts of being raped by his father and others were fuzzy because he made them up. Both of LaMonica's sons, in a surprise twist, recanted on the witness stand their previous allegations that they had been sexually abused by their father. The question is, why would you say things that were so horrible if it wasn't true? Defense attorney Michael Thiel asked the elder son during testimony. I think that's what everyone wants to know. The elder son had told authorities that his memories of the abuse are blurry, which he said means that his memories of the abuse aren't real. Instead, the memories were created because of suggestions made by his mother, Robin LaMonica, or another church member, Nicole Bernard. Ideas about how the abuse could occur came to him because he was told to write about specific aspects of the abuse by his mother. Both boys wrote hundreds of pages detailing abuse by their father and other church members. The elder son also said on the witness stand that he was taught at church that sinful thoughts are the same as doing the acts. Therefore, he was told that if he thought it, he should write it down because it probably happened. At my church, I was taught that if you thought about it, it carried on into the physical world, the elder son said. If I thought about killing someone, then wouldn't there be a dead body? Prosecutor Donwall asked. It can, but it doesn't always happen like that, the young man replied. The LaMonica boys are now around ages 32 and 28. It is unknown to this content creator where they live now, but I truly hope they have found peace. By the end of July 2005, the number of alleged victims had been whittled down to 3, and the prosecutor decided to drop any claims involving Satanism or occultism, as it was essentially immaterial to the cases. But the charges still included full-fledged child rape, though, as well as molestation. Louis LaMonica received concurrent life terms for the rape and molestation of his own children. Trey Bernard was also tried and convicted of aggravated rape. As for the church itself, it stood empty and abandoned for quite a while after the story came to light. And as if to wash it clean, Katrina hit the Gulf Coast and became a saga unto herself. Today, the church stands as another building of faith. A new congregation has called it home. I have a sneaking suspicion that things are much brighter these days in the building, and the church does exactly as advertised. During Christmas, it is decorated with lights and Christmas trees, and during spring the flowers bloom and the land seems happier. Years later, the story inspired Nick Pizzolatto, a writer. He wrote the story of the series True Detective that has now run for 2 seasons on HBO. To this day, the whole story is one that the entire town would like to put behind them. So convoluted and strange, nothing like it has happened before or since as of this video. The town has since been flooded twice, and yet life continues and fights ever harder to push forward. The dark days, as they say, with any luck, are over. Hey, thanks everybody for watching. If you like the content, hit that like button, and while you're at it, don't forget to click the subscribe button. Y'all take care, and I'll see you very soon.